What's up everybody, Dusty here, and we are back at it in The Sims 2. Now when we last left them, Big City and his wife Jessica had just celebrated their son Desmond's birthday and moved out of their apartment and into a respectable house out in the suburbs. As previously established, Big City's the one in charge of most of the domestic housework, such as the cooking and cleaning, while Jessica handles the tasks that require good old-fashioned manual labor. Now I know some people would be opposed to this whole arrangement, but Big City is a 21st century man, so if his wife wants to be the one who takes care of all the yard work and unclogs the toilets, then he's not gonna fight her over it. And honestly, considering their respective skill levels, you could argue that Big City has the far more dangerous job. Like, can you imagine being out jumping rope at 4 a.m., as children do, only to have a fire truck come racing up because your dad somehow almost burnt down the entire house while attempting to make pancakes? But fires aside, now that Desmond was no longer just a helpless little poop-making monster who required constant attention, his parents found that they once again actually had some free time and were able to resuscitate their practically non-existent social lives by reconnecting with old friends as well as making a few new ones. Even Clarence was invited back into the fold after he'd essentially been banished to the Shadow Realm due to his criminal connections. Yeah, it turns out once you climb high enough in the business field, you realize almost everybody's crooked.
Fugazi, Fugazi, it's a wazi, it's a woozy, it's a fairy dust. It doesn't exist.
And like most long-term couples, they often found themselves attempting to spice things up in the bedroom, although their antics weren't limited to such vanilla locations. You just know that poor kid's gonna have some questions later.
It smells funny in there.
No, it doesn't.
As for Desmond himself, he was just your average kid. He went to school, played with his friends, engaged in some hobbies, and learned a small degree of responsibility in the form of homework and the occasional light housework. Trust me though, kid, it could be a hell of a lot worse. There was one minor inconvenience though when Jessica's schedule changed after she's promoted to senior officer and the family is forced to hire a nanny because leaving a kid home alone for an hour apparently constitutes child abuse in Sim City.
Now I'm gonna starve!
I swear, this woman has the easiest job in history. She literally does nothing but read the paper until the bus shows up. And the one time Desmond had a snow day and she was actually needed, she spent 80% of the time just wasting the family's food supplies by making a bunch of crap that nobody wanted to eat. Big City would also suffer quite the setback when one of his investments went down the drain, costing him $4,000, which was more than the family actually had on hand, meaning they were technically bankrupt. Don't feel too bad for them though. It's easier for the rich to bounce back from these kinds of things, and while this sort of setback would have had Big City and Jessica pawning off everything valuable just to make a rent back in the trailer park, after only a day's work, they were pretty much back where they started. In fact, things were going well enough that Big City and Jessica decided the family was in need of another member and decided to adopt the kitty Bonkers. Now, spoilers, Bonkers here doesn't really add anything to the story, and honestly, I could have gone the whole video without putting a spotlight on him, and it wouldn't have made that much of a difference. But I mean, come on, look at the little bastard.
If anything happened to him, I would kill everyone in this room and then myself.
In a further attempt to give Desmond all the advantages they didn't have when they were coming up, Jessica and Big City would also attempt to enroll him in a local private academy and invited the headmaster over. Everything seemed to be going well as he was given a tour of the house and enjoyed some of Big City's famous spaghetti, but he must have sniffed out the family's humble trailer park origins as every attempt to schmooze with the old snob was repeatedly shot down. Naturally, their response to this is to lock him in a hastily thrown together pen out on the front lawn.
Put the lotion in the fucking basket!
But this is when Jessica and Big City learned that they'd apparently been attempting to enroll Desmond into Hogwarts as the headmaster pulls some voodoo bullshit and vanishes into thin air. I mean, it makes sense if it was Bonkers.
Cats do not abide by the laws of nature.
However, the man apparently learned his lesson as he proved to be far more receptive during his follow-up trip. But if you thought Desmond was the only overachiever in the family, then you best think again, as Jessica would fulfill the dreams of many Sims and attain the rank of astronaut, allowing her to explore the stars and help to uncover the mysteries of the universe firsthand. As impressive as that is though, can you imagine how annoying it'd be to have an astronaut for a mom? Like, she makes plans for a family lunch or something when you just want to hang out with your friends, so she hits you with,
I came back from space.
like, how you gonna respond to that? On the upside though, it has to be nice to know you're gonna get everything you want for your birthday. I mean, what more could a kid ask for than a version of The Sims busting out that looks like it's recorded on a Nintendo DS and only lets you make your sim before it boots you back to the main menu? Oh yeah, speaking of birthdays, it was time for Desmond's next one, so all the guests are invited over, and after the customary festivities, it was time for everybody to gather around and watch him blow out the candles as they got a few steps closer to adulthood. By the end of the night, the guests had basically trashed the kitchen, and there was one guy who had peed himself himself and was desperately in need of a shower, so all in all, it was pretty much your classic sim party. However, Big City and Jessica did learn that the private academy that they had signed Desmond up for might not have been as prestigious as they were led to believe, as the headmaster hangs around and plays Desmond's new drum set long after everybody else has gone home for the night, and when Desmond finally sends him packing, he seems really distressed by his lack of tips. Now you might be thinking that the fact that Desmond is still having trouble with his elementary school homework as a teenager would indicate a challenging curriculum, but you have to remember that this is a kid who originally thought that a pool floaty was a fashion accessory, so the boy might not be dealing with a full deck here.
I'm special!
Shortly after this, Jessica would finally put an end to the debate as to who was the official breadwinner once and for all, when the public support for her latest mission, the very creatively named Operation Explore Unknown Oceans, swells, leading to a National Innovators Award, which was accompanied by 50,000 simoleons, firmly establishing the family in the upper class. She would immediately use some of that cash to buy Desmond a car, so he no longer had to rely on public transportation like some sort of homeless vagrant, and also buy herself an old junker, which she would begin to restore as a hobby. Speaking of Desmond, he now quickly found himself having to deal with all the highs and lows that come with those lovely teenage hormones. Remember when life was so simple that your biggest worries were dealing with an acne breakout and finding out that your crush liked you back, and getting to second base was actually something worth bragging about?
Make out rave. Good times, good times.
However, as much as he might have cared for his main squeeze Ratna, it would soon become apparent that Desmond had quite the wandering eye and didn't consider himself a one-woman kind of sim. And unlike his dad, the art of seduction would come naturally to Desmond, and I'm sure all the money he now had to play around with certainly didn't hurt. Still, it didn't take him too long to discover that some people were still immune to his charms. Eventually, Jessica would wrap up work on that junker she was restoring, but a midlife crisis would lead to her flipping it immediately for a tidy profit, then buying an exotic sports car and taking advantage of the platinum aspiration score it provided to drink from the elixir of life. She would use the precious days it added to reach the top of the military career and be able to fully appreciate the fruits of her labor while still in her prime. Meanwhile, Big City had finally put the finishing touches on that novel he'd been working on for the last few years. It wasn't a runaway bestseller that was going to convince him to quit his day job anytime soon, but it did respectable enough that he was inspired to immediately start work on a follow-up. From trailer park trash to your milestone city family, I think it's safe to say Big City and Jessica had done everything within their power to provide Desmond with a proper upbringing. But of course, as parents, you know that your whole job is to get your little baby bird ready to leave the nest. It seems like one day you're changing diapers and teaching them how to walk and talk, and the next day they're applying for scholarships. Then before you know it, they're out the door and off to college, where lacking any parental oversights, they'll now be free to make all their own decisions. For better and worse. You know it's true what they say, life comes at you fast. What's up people, Dusty here again, and I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you didn't, then I've got no clue why you're still here at this point. Like, what are you doing? But if you did enjoy it, then why not leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel to be kept up to date with all my latest content. Or don't, you know. Don't let me tell you how to live your life. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. I'm out.